What if I told you a singer crucified himself on the Hollywood sign and still got dropped by his label? Love-Hate bled for their shot, signed the deal, and got buried anyway. Here's how the wildest band in LA turned survival into revenge.
Like, subscribe, thank you.
They weren't rehearsing in a polished Sunset Strip studio. They were squatting in a downtown LA loft with no heat, no plumbing, and a whole lot of echo. It was 1985, and the band, then called Data Clan, was still trying to figure out who they were. James Wilkinson on the vocals, Johnny Love twisting guitar shapes in the corner, Skid Row's, not to be confused with Skid Row, the band, laying down those syrupy, elastic bass lines. Joey Gold keeping time like a jackhammer stuck in a concrete wall. Forget hairspray and eyeliner, they were digging into something weirder. The music pulsed with this mutant energy. Hodgepodge, stitched from the moody fog of the Cults of Love, the dance floor twitch of Wang Chung, and the loose funk chaos of early Chili Peppers. K-rock freaks, goth club regulars, ex-punks, they're drawing a strange little following without even trying. Skid Row's nailed it when he called it the new wave doom disco. No one else was making anything like it. Glam was exploding next door, all lipstick and Les Pauls, but these guys were off in their own headspace, mixing pop melodies with smoke-blackened guitar riffs and the rhythm section that could lock you in place or shove you down the stairs, depending on the day. 7 years, same 4 guys, same broken toilets, some building somewhere. The old Hertz Rent-A-Car HQ in downtown LA, a brutalist monolith with rats in the walls and hopelessness right outside the door. They weren't crashing there, they lived there. Offices turned into bedrooms, a defunct secretary bullpen rewired into a rehearsal bunker. No showers or fridge, just cables, amps, and a city that didn't care if they vanished. James Wilkinson, soon to be reborn as Jizzy Pearl, called it Dazed and Confused. But it was more than that. It was wild-eyed, junky romanticism mixed with a kind of poverty that makes you think acid tabs count as vitamins. Their drug use wasn't about parties, it was about searching, expanding, ruining themselves slowly with purpose. They didn't know how deep they were sinking. But somehow, between blackout nights and cold mornings, they pulled it together long enough to cut a 4-song EP on fumes and pawnshop loans. They even managed to book a mini tour of Mexico, where their sound, this twitchy, gothic, hard-edged funk metal beast, bombed with biblical force. Crowds were confused. Promoters got pissed off. Momentum dead on arrival. Still, the labels were circling. Capitol sniffed around. So did Atlantic. Word was spreading. But when the big night came, a showcase at the Pickfair Mansion in the hills, it all collapsed. Bad sound, nerves were shot, Jizzy's voice was shredded. One record exec even laughed. Another left mid-set. Within 48 hours, every offer evaporated. The buzz had turned into mockery. And on that Sunset Strip, nobody forgot when a band tanked that hard. But just when it looked like the dream had flatlined, they changed the name and started crawling back from the wreckage. By early 86, Data Clan was dead. The band buried the name in the dirt and pulled a new one from their setlist, Love-Hate. Both a rebrand and a survival mechanism. A way to shake off the Pickfair humiliation and rewrite the script before the scene wrote them off for good. But a name change did not fix hunger. Skid was hawking flowers to couples in traffic. Jizzy and John were flipping through classified ads, praying for anything under the table. Rent still needed paying, gear still needed power, and the warehouse they called home, the scared dump of theirs only stayed theirs because Joey Gold's parents cut the deposit check. The rich kid drummer might have had a trust fund somewhere, but he was still slumming it with the rest of them, whether they liked it or not. No radio play, no gigs with guarantees, no interest from the majors, but every time a grainy photo of Jizzy or John landed on the back pages of Rock City News, it felt like a win. One snap of their busted makeup or war-torn gear in print, and the flame stayed lit another week. One tiny reminder that they hadn't wasted the last 6 years sleeping on concrete and bleeding into microphones. Maybe. But even with songs slipping into Hollywood soundtracks, nobody knew the next big break would come from the guy who once shared a stage with Tawny Kitaen and a rodent tail. It happened by accident. One gig at the Whiskey. They tossed out a cover of Motley Crue's Livewire. Just a mid-set detour to keep the energy up. But the place erupted. No more confused stares or half claps. People actually went nuts. And that was it. Love-Hate started cutting the weirdness out of their sound. No more genre gumbo. No more art-damaged synth funk. They went lean, mean, loud. Straight up hard rock with enough sleaze to stick. They're still broke. sleeping in a concrete box, still high as kites, except Joey Gold, the one guy in the band who wouldn't touch booze or smoke, standing straight while the rest spiraled sideways. But they were onto something. And then came the next miracle, Juan Crucier, Rat's bass player, Sunset Strip royalty. He caught a set, heard the demo, saw the spark. He didn't just nod and disappear, he offered to produce the group. Not even as a favor, as a believer. They cut tracks in his home studio. And those songs, raw, pulsing, stripped-down tracks, would become the spine of their debut. And while they're still hustling, still nameless to most of the world, their songs started bleeding into the background noise of pop culture. Critters, 1986. No credit, just theirs. And then on A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 in 88, She's an Angel, crawling through the soundtrack like a ghost they didn't know they had unleashed. They still weren't famous, but now they're kind of everywhere. James Wilkinson didn't stand a chance, not on that strip, not with that name. Clubs are war zones, flamethrowers, blood bags, cages, and chaos. Guys like Blackie Lawless were throwing meat into the crowd. Vince Neil had backup dancers. If you wanted anybody to give a shit, you needed a gimmick, a monster, a freak. So what does he do? Well, he became Jizzy Pearl. Not overnight. It took humiliation. It took bombing in front of LA Guns, sloppy, off-key, and wasted. The kind of show where nobody claps and everybody remembers. And that set broke something in him. From the rubble crawled this louder, leaner, dangerous version of himself. He wasn't trying to be liked anymore. He wanted to be seen. And Jizzy, that got seen. Got banned, too. Banned from half the strip for picking fights, screaming at bouncers, biting strangers for no reason. He showed up drunk, played drunker, and left in handcuffs or barefoot. It was less of a persona and more of an unraveling with a mic in its hand. And still they followed him. John, Skid, Joey, who was sober as a judge, kept Jizzy from dying one night when the singer, mid-pee from a rooftop ledge, tipped forward, 1 second from splattering all over the alley. Joey lunged, grabbed him, dragged him back. 6 stories. And the next day, Jizzy got back on stage like nothing ever happened. But landing the golden ticket didn't mean they got to keep it, because what came next was a masterclass in how the music industry gives with one hand and guts you with the other. It happened under the hazy lights of the Whiskey A Go-Go, same stage where they'd bombed, clawed, and bled for scraps. December of 1988, 4.5 years after most bands would have packed it in. Love Hate, somehow still standing, inked a $1 million deal with Columbia. Right there on stage. Right there in front of the same scene that once laughed them out of the hills. Jizzy called it the last Wonka golden ticket. And it was. One shot. One label finally said yes. They went straight into the studio in 89. No second chances or throwaways. Just years of frustration poured into a debut record that refused to play anything safe. Blackout in the Red Room hit shelves on February 22nd, 1990. Molotov cocktail of AC/DC punch, Jane's Addiction weirdness, and that sleaze-laced venom they'd been perfecting in the gutters of LA did not explode in the charts. Number 154 on Billboard 200. But it cracked through. Enough to be dangerous. Enough for Jizzy, decades later, to say that it still held up. No shame, no asterisks. A record they could own forever. Just when they thought the nightmare had turned into a dream, the business side comes a-knocking. 1990 was a blur. 10 months straight. Clubs, sheds, arenas, from headlining smoke-choked dives to opening for Dio under the open sky. And then the brass ring. The Razor's Edge tour. AC/DC, stadiums, tens of thousands. Jizzy Pearl, once dangling off rooftops and banned from half of Hollywood, now belting it out on the same stage where Angus Young duck walked across generation. And MTV caught on too. Why do you think they call it dope? And She's an Angel got real airtime. Not heavy rotation, but enough. Enough to give them a shot. Enough to push that debut out of the underground and into actual record stores. The UK, they got it. While the US played hard to get, British fans actually locked into it. Kerrang! Metal Hammer both called Blackout in the Red Room the best album of the year. Not one of the best, the best. They did 2 tours overseas, headlining 2,000-seat rooms like it was nothing. Real rock star shit. And it stuck. Decades later, Jizzy could still walk into a club in Birmingham or Manchester and find a crowd screaming the words back. But there was a catch. There's always a catch. Sales. Columbia wanted platinum. They got 200,000. Not bad for a debut. Not enough for the boardroom. Despite the praise and the shows, despite the buzz, to the label, it smelled like underperformance. And when the label smells blood, they start looking for who to blame. And coming off the high of the road, Love Hate figured that they were ready to level up. But Columbia had other plans. The first batch of songs for album 2, rejected. No notes, just a flat-out no. The label did not want another blackout. They wanted something shinier and slicker. Crossover appeal, they called it. Something that they could sell to the shopping mall crowd. So the band got dragged out of LA and dropped into New York. Label leash tight, eyes red from burnout, ego starting to splinter. Writing had become a battle. Jizzy wanted fire, Columbia wanted polish. Every riff was second-guessed. Every lyric got neutered. The weird edges, the street grime, the DNA of the band, all got ground down. By the time Wasted in America dropped in 92, the world had flipped. Here we go again. Nirvana detonated the scene. Flannel wave was in full flood. Grunge was everything. Swagger was out. Attitude was tired. Guys like Jizzy Pearl, the industry was already writing them off as holdovers from a decade that now pretended to hate. Pearl saw it and felt it. Shit was changing, he said, and he wasn't wrong. The album that should have been the breakthrough was treated like a relic before it even charted. Nobody cared that it was more raw, angry, better. The label didn't push it. Radio didn't bite. Crowds started thinning. And behind closed doors, Columbia started making moves that would sink the band for good. With Wasted in America dead on arrival and Columbia already icing them out, Jizzy Pearl decided if they're going down, they're going to do it loud. He needed a spectacle. Final burning middle finger to the scene, the industry, and the city that chewed them up. The seed had been rotting in his head for years. Back when he was broke, strung out, living like a vampire in the Hertz building, Jizzy would stare at that Hollywood sign and fantasize about sacrifice. Real ritual crap. Peg Entwistle had jumped from the H in 1932, unknowingly birthing a legend. She didn't make it, by the way. Jizzy wanted to hijack that darkness and twist it into a resurrection. Skid Row's, always lurking on the edge of avant-garde, was messing with art film ideas and figured they could shoot the whole thing for a never-finished love-hate movie. And he built the thing himself, a 20 by 30 foot cross, heavy, brutal, perfect. It wasn't just a publicity stunt. It was a crucifixion planned like a heist. Skid drew the map. Jizzy plotted the climb. The city had no idea what was coming. June 1st, 1992, nightfall. Jizzy Pearl, Joey Gold, Skid Row, and a friend dragged the disassembled cross up the side of Mount Lee like grave robbers on a mission. Skid had warrants, so he couldn't be a part of the actual stunt. Instead, he stayed below while the others built the wooden behemoth behind the Hollywood signs H, and then halted to the Y. 3 p.m. the next day, heat was blazing. Jizzy made the climb, alone. He looked down, 60 feet of nothing between him and oblivion. The chain ladder whipped beneath him like a live wire. He almost bailed. Then it kinked, snapped, and sent him spinning on the crucifix, legs flailing, screaming like a banshee. Joey Gold, watching from the base, doubled over laughing. No cameras yet or news vans, just a rock singer hanging from a homemade cross, baking in the California sun and hoping that somebody would notice. 2 hours passed before a news chopper finally caught sight of him.
Can you tell if there's some sort of lettering around his waist?
Jizzo?
It looks like that.
Jizzo.
Just about what...
It's been confirmed that it was the lead singer Jizzy Pearl for the rock group Love Hate, and he's out of there now.
First reports thought it was somebody that wanted to call it quits, a tragedy in the making. Then came the letdown. It was a publicity stunt. No tears, just a half-naked man with a dream and a criminal record. Cops swarmed the place. Firefighters screamed. Jizzy claimed he couldn't get down. They brought a ladder, hauled him off, arrested him. He spent hours in custody, cracking to the psych evaluator, "I'm making a plea to the rock gods. It should have been their Sid Vicious moment, their Gigi Allen, their shot at infamy." But Columbia did not see legend. They saw liability. They pulled the plug. Tour support with Black Sabbath? Gone. Record deal? Gone. Wasted in America flatlined. Sales didn't budge. The only thing that changed was the security budget around the Hollywood sign. Jizzy's little stunt became a footnote in tabloid ink, not a rebirth. And Love Hate, once clawing toward the top, were left twisting in the wind, just like Jizzy was from that ladder. The stunt scorched everything. No more Columbia, no more budget. Soon, no more Johnny Love. He quit just months after the fallout, cracking the original lineup down the middle. Skid Row's, still too stubborn to quit, sold his car to fund the third album. Let's Rumble was a Hail Mary, bashed out in a matter of days in 93. Definitely was not polished, wasn't market tested, but it was survival, and it almost worked. Spinning Wheel actually got heavy spins on KNAC, the LA hard rock lifeline, but when fans went looking for the album, it was not in the stores. Distribution was botched. The US release limped and months late on a throwaway label. Whatever spark they had left got swallowed by bad timing and worse logistics. And after that, releases just got messier. Lineups got blurrier. They self-produced I'm Not Happy in 95, with John briefly back in the fold. Then came Living Off Layla, Frankenstein and Leftovers, and B-Sides dumped out in 97, with Jizzy phoning in vocals he didn't even want to record. It wasn't even a band anymore. And by 99, Jizzy had enough of waiting for the others. He raided his side project vault and slapped together Let's Eat under the Love Hate name. And it wasn't really a love-hate album. It's just the only way anybody might listen. Chemistry that once fueled him, that sharp electric chaos that lit up the whiskey stage, totally gone, rotting, replaced by petty arguments and ghost projects and splinter bands. Skid, John, and Joey had Skull. Jizzy and Joey had Sin Eaters. The scene had shifted. Dream rotted. People got married, had kids, started looking for day jobs. By 94, it was over. Sold all their gear and called it. In 98, Dio came calling. A reunion was floated. Skid said no. Joey and Johnny said yes. Cordell Crockett, once their roadie, now Ugly Kid Joe's bassist, stepped in. They toured. It sucked. Then Jizzy left his own band, walked away from the name he crucified himself for to sing for LA Guns. And Jizzy's post-love-hate ride was one long game of musical chairs through the wreckage of LA glam. His shot with LA Guns in 99 barely lasted a year. He cut Shrinking Violet and then got the boot when the classic lineup smelled reunion money. No hard feelings, just rock math. And then came Rat. Piercy bailed in 2000. Jizzy tried out, didn't get it at first, but then the call came back. He stepped in, held the mic, stayed for 6.5 years. Not just as a placeholder. He fronted tours, shared stages with Cinderella, Quiet Riot, never pretended to be Stephen Piercy, and that's why it worked. No cheap shots or ego wars, just mutual respect. Just a gig, he said. 2005 saw him moonlight with Adler's Appetite, Steven Adler's post-GNR mess of a band. They released an EP and did the rounds. Jizzy was always working, always showing up, even as his spotlight dimmed. And the love-hate name never really died, though. In 2002, he slapped it on a European tour with Gilby Clarke. Fans turned up. The buzz hadn't vanished, just moved. Then came February 24th, 2007, Club Vodka in Hollywood. The original four, Jizzy, Skid, John, Joey. Blackout in the Red Room, front to back, sold out. A night everybody swore they would never ever get again. Later that year, they took it across the Atlantic. This time, Jizzy, Skid, Joey, and Darren Householder ripping through Blackout to packed UK clubs. More tours followed, more rotating lineups. 2013, Jizzy dragged the name through another revival with Robbie Crane, Kerry Kelly, and Matt Starr. Crowds kept coming, pint glasses in hand. Because in Europe, the love-hate sound, that sleaze and that attitude, off-kilter melodies all stuck. It fit the bar culture, the chaos, and the sweat-soaked intimacy of packed pub shows. To them, it wasn't dated. It was real. But back in the States, one of the guys who helped build that name wasn't done with it either. In 2013, Jizzy slid into yet another iconic vacancy, this time as the new voice of Quiet Riot. The band was rebuilding after the loss of Kevin Dubrow, and Jizzy brought in just enough grit to make it work. He laid down vocals for Quiet Riot 10, released in 2014, which split its track list between fresh cuts and ghost-soaked live recordings of Dubrow, part tribute and part new chapter. By the end of 2016, Jizzy stepped out again, said he wanted to focus on his solo work, but that door never stayed closed for long. In September 2019, after James Durbin exited the lineup, Jizzy walked right back into the Quiet Riot stuff, only this time it was personal. Frankie Banali, the band's heartbeat and survivor of 1,000 road miles, was battling cancer. Jizzy didn't come back for the gig, he came back for the guy. They hit the stage together one last time before Banali passed away. Jizzy watching a man who should have been in a hospital bed crush a set with surgical precision and a big-ass huge smile on his face. Jizzy saw it up close, how deep the roots ran, how hard rock really isn't about music when it counts. But just as he was carrying that torch, somebody else lit a match under the love-hate legacy. Late 2013, Jizzy dropped Crucified, a 6-track mini album packed with fresh blood and old wounds, including Hanging You Out to Dry, lyrical gut punch recounting the infamous Hollywood stunt through his own unfiltered lens. He stamped it with the love-hate name, and that's when all hell broke loose. Johnny Love, the original 6-string architect, went public, threatened to sue, said it wasn't a real love-hate record. No Skid, no Joey, no him. To John, it was a hijacking. To Jizzy, it was survival, his story, his scars, and of course his own crucifixion. So the name got stripped, the album got rebranded under Jizzy Pearl's name alone, but the fight showed what everybody already knew. Love-hate wasn't a band anymore, it was a battlefield. Meanwhile, Jizzy kept creating. He wasn't just a frontman anymore, he was a storyteller, an author. First came I Got More Crickets Than Friends in 99, then a string of gritty, bitter, painfully funny books that read like diaries from the underworld of glam rock. When the pandemic hit, he re-released early ones as softcover while rewriting another. Solo records kept trickling out. Vegas Must Die in 2005, Just a Boy in 2007, All You Need Is Soul in 2018. Each one a transmission from the last man standing in a genre full of casualties. Love Hate, meanwhile, was mutating. In 2020, Jizzy signed the name to Golden Robot Records. 2 years later, Hell, California dropped. Raw, Weird, and Totally Alive. And a seventh record, Punk Rock Fiesta, is already on the calendar for 2025. But the thing is, it's not about fame anymore. It's about finishing the job. The name Love Hate started as a punchline, then a band, then a warning. Now it's a legacy carved into wood, burned on film, still echoing through the dive bars and haunted clubs where rock really never dies. Thanks to my subscribers, you are freaking awesome. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, take that subscribe button, stick it on the Y, up on the mountain, climb aboard it, reach over, grab the like button, hold on to it for dear life, and join the family. I want to thank you so much for watching.
Better watch out, see things, little things seem larger than life.